as I said before, you will be running a UCS system. Let's first talk a little about the environment of the lab. You will not get any paperwork, so everything will be online. That's the first thing that's going to be the case. So you will not receive any paper besides your note paper, of course. So your scrap paper. You will get all kinds of colored pens and stuff, just like you would have in RNS, but the lab tasks will be digital. When you log into your system, you will log into a Windows system. You will open up the lab diagram, which is a full screen window where it shows you all the components that you have access to. So you will see all kinds of different components, Nexuses and the UCS system and the C-series servers and the things. And some of these things you can click on. So some of the hosts are clickable, like the Nexus switches. You can click on them and then it opens up a terminal session. The terminal session will be a PuTTY window. There's no secure CRT anymore in the lab. It's all based on PuTTY, meaning I do not have any tabs. I will have a separate PuTTY window for each device that I open. With the scope of the CCIE Data Center Lab, that means that you will open up a lot of these sessions. So a lot of these windows will open up for you. So you'll get on your taskbar, you will have all these windows open. So it might be beneficial for you if you close down the PuTTY windows that you do not need at that moment for configuring a certain task. So next, how do I access the tasks that I need to do? So first of all, you open up the Internet Explorer and you will see the whole topology drawing. Now above that drawing, there will be multiple buttons and they will state section 1, section 2, section 3, or loading the full lab section. That means that I can open up a pop-up window and there I will see all the lab tasks. So I will see a task. Comparable to how our mock labs look. So I will see a task like task 1, which is called virtual port channeling. Then in that virtual port channeling task, I will have multiple bullets. All of these bullets are related to this single task. And it says configure switch 3, configure switch 1, configure the UCS, configure all kinds of things. And below there it says 3 points. So to get those 3 points, finish all these bullets. Just like you would in RNS, you will either pass or fail a certain task. So you will get either the 3 points or 0 points. No subdivision or no separate points are given for finishing some tasks. So a full task like this, if it says task number 1.1, finish all the bullets. If you successfully completed all the bullets, then you will get the points. Of course, that depends on the rest of your configuration. If some things in this thing are dependent on other tasks, then you might or might not lose the points in this task. So that's the difficult point about the data center test. Everything cascades, as they call that, on top of each other. So the network cascades on the UCS, and then I need to run some VMware stuff in it, and I need some connections to my network. So a lot of things are going on there. So therefore, I don't really know if I will get the point or not. It depends on the rest of the configuration. So that's the one port. That's for the PuTTY port. That's for the console port. By the way, because on the Nexus 7000 side, I will not go in depth on the Nexus right now, but on the Nexus 7000 side, you will access it via SSH sessions directly into the terminal of the Nexus, into a certain VDC. On the Nexus 5 case, you connect to them via the console. That has the limitation that you cannot enable debugging. In NXOS, if I'm running in 9600 bits a second, so normal console speed, if I'm running that, so 9600 BPS, like any console line, I can not enable debugging. So in the lab, on your Nexus 5K, you will not be able to do debugging. You can do that to a log file, of course, so you can debug to a log file, but you cannot debug on the CLI itself. So that's a very important thing to remember. Now on the UCS part, you will not open up a PuTTY window. Because the UCS is a graphical user interface, the PuTTY windows that I can open goes to the console of the Fabric Interconnect. So the Fabric interconnects, I can access them via the console and use the PuTTY sessions for there to verify my configuration. But for the GUI part, I'm using an RDP, so Windows Remote Desktop. I RDP into a management server, which is inside the data center rack. And from that server, I open up the UCS Manager. There will just be an icon UCS Manager, so I do not care if it's IE or Chrome or Firefox. I just click on the UCS Manager icon. Of course, I could use my Internet Explorer because that's the only browser I have available to access the UCS Manager and go into the KVM console and stuff. But that's going to be your access towards the GUI of the UCS. So clicking on the icon, it will open up the correct Java version. Of course, on your local machine you might or may not have a lot of issues with it, but you will not have it in the lab. So it will open up the GUI there. CLI, there is also a PuTTY executable on that RDP, so you technically can RDP or technically can SSH into the Nexuses and into the Fabric interconnects by using their IP addresses. But that's how you may or may not like to use it. Also on that RDP, my Data Center Network Manager or DCNM is available. So if you're looking for that to configure things, DCNM is going to be available there. And then finally, how do I access documentation? That's going back to my original desktop where I also open up that diagram. There's also a link, Cisco documentation. And that will open up in a certain browser window. So that will go into this page. So when going to support, going to all product support, this is the page that will show up. Where I can select all kinds of things, and everything, all the documentation is available. All the white papers, all the technical demonstrations, examples, tech notes, configuration guides, command references, everything is available in the documentation except for the search feature. So as soon as I type in some things here and I click on find, it will error out because of some proxy server that's in between. Be aware that this proxy server will be slow. So if I click on, let's say, Unified Computing, I click on the UCS Manager, that's going to be pretty fast, but before, like this page loads quite quickly, right? Just on my local internet connection. But in the lab, this will take several seconds. Every time you click on something, command, reference, will take several seconds to load it because it will need to go back and forth between the proxy server to see if the page is allowed or not. So that's for documentation. Does the lab have a separate troubleshooting section? No. No separate troubleshooting section. Just you log in at when the day starts and you will start configuring things, but there will be troubleshooting included. Meaning you will see pre-configuration. Your UCS may be pre-configured with something, your Nexus 1000V may be pre-configured with something, or other devices, but usually that's kind of limited. So you expect pre-configuration on the devices and expect errors in it. And they will not tell you troubleshoot it. They will tell you configure a task. And at some point you see that something is not working because there is some pre-configuration that limits you for doing that. So for example, VSM has pre-configuration for a number of VLANs, and they will tell you make sure that the VSM or the Nexus 1000V is using the same network settings as the data center network itself. That means that you need to configure the same VLANs and the same things. So all kinds of other stuff. So all that stuff, be aware of tweaking your configuration that you find on the devices, and be aware that you will see errors in it.